Hey everybody, how you doing? This is about to be a really fun video. You guys that watch the show would know I just recently got something that slings these right here. What in the world is this? This is 6mm arc. If you didn't know, well, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know, but isn't that thing short and stubby? Kind of weird, right? Kind of weird. What this particular one is right here is a 108 grain ELD match. So 6mm arc. It's kind of a Hornady thing, but you guys started asking me a bunch of questions and I didn't know the answers to, but today we're going to have a bunch of answers. So one of my goals is to have videos and learn myself everything about everything when it comes to bullet slingers and bing bangs and generally speaking, ballistics on everything. How does this compare to that? Well, we got 6mm arc added in here now. You guys watch the show, like I said, would have seen me. I just got this. This is a CMMG BR4. No buffer tube. Has an 870 stock. I think it's pretty sweet. 16-inch barrel in 6mm arc. Now, they come out with these in quite a few different calibers. So if something cool like this floats your boat, definitely go check them out. CMMG BR4. This one's in 6mm arc. So what did I do? I went out and got a bunch of different types of ammo for it. I got these, plus another one is out in the hallway. And that's the Fort Scott. So I got 4 different types. Well, y'all started hitting me up. What does that compare to this? And let's figure it out. So I just sat here this morning, and we're going to compare the 6mm arc, that little short stubby thing, versus the 6mm creedmoor, also a 243 Winchester, which is a 6mm projectile, also 6mm Remington, also the 6.5 creedmoor, and also the 6.5 Grendel. I'm not going to drag this out, but here's the 4 categories that I'm going to show you comparing all of these. Drop in inches, which really the purpose or the relevance is if you're using holdover. So say you dial it in dead on at 100. What would your holdover be at 200, at 300, at 400? Once you get past that, it's kind of irrelevant because what's 536 inches? You know, how many feet is that? You're not going to hold over like 20 feet. You're going to do dialing. But also what I'm going to show you is the dials in mils and in MOA for your scopes for all of those cartridges I just talked about. And we're going to be able to see what's better, a 6 arc, a 6mm Remington, the 6mm Creedmoor, the Grendel. Not a whole lot of people talking about Grendel, but we'll see. Grendel kind of is the worst on this whole list, ballistically speaking. And then we're also going to compare the energy at given distances. And all this I've done out to 1,200 yards. So stay tuned. Watch to the end. We're just going to go right through these and compare and see how the 6mm arc compares to all those others. So let's talk about the drop in inches right off the bat. We'll pop this up. So you can see next to all this I have the G1 ballistic coefficient, I have the muzzle velocity, and then telling what it is. Now, there's some caveats here. All this data is based off of Hornady rounds. So the 6mm arc is a Hornady round. They're pretty much the only people loading it. So to make it a fair comparison, I took those same projectiles across the Hornady product lines, and that's what we're comparing. Also, this is box data. So even for the 6mm arc, it says right in here, this data is for a 24-inch barrel. So realistically speaking, all these numbers would be pretty fair to what you'll get out of a bolt action. Now this thing right here I've got is a 16-inch barrel. So it's going to be a slower velocity. Not quite the performance out of a much longer bolt action, but we get the addition of having it in semi-auto, staying on target. Pop, 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 pop. But when I do get the chronograph readings on this 16-inch barrel, I'm going to do up my own charts so we can take a long range. But if you're going to use these numbers, these are good numbers when it goes to the dials and everything. If you're using a bolt action, these are going to be fairly close to what you could use and use as a starting point at the range when it comes to the dials, so on and so forth. So, long intro there. I said this was going to be a short video. Let's pop up the drop in inches. So, across the board, all these colors. Green means the best. Red means the worst. Yellow means we're somewhere in the middle. So, let's look at drop in inches. So, again, we're comparing the 6mm arc loadings, 6mm Creedmoor. There's a 243 in there. 6mm Remington Hornady only loads the SST. You can see that's a 95 grain there. And then a couple of the most common 6.5 Creedmoors. And then the only 6.5 Grendel that Hornady loads is also in a match. But you can see 6.5 Grendel drops the most. That's the red line across the bottom. 6.5 Grendel drops the most. What's the best? You'll see that green there in the middle. Well, from a drop perspective at distance, the 6mm Creedmoor drops the least using these Hornady products. So 6mm arc, it's in the middle with the 6.5 Creedmoor. It does drop more than the 6.5 Creedmoor, but if you asked me, hey man, compare 6mm arc, the 6mm Creedmoor, 243, the 6 Remington, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 Grendel, which one drops the least? Well, 6mm Creedmoor. Interestingly enough, if you look at the ballistic coefficients, so Hornady loads, if you look at the ELD 6mm Creedmoor, they're in the green in the middle, and then the ELDX, Hornady loads the same projectile in the 6mm Creedmoor as well as in the 6mm arc. It's the same projectile, same ballistic coefficient. So that kind of brings up the question, why get a 6mm arc if you can get a 6mm Creedmoor with the same projectile with a lot less drop? Well, you might say, well, it's because 6mm arc is better in a semi-auto. Well, that may be true, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's people out there making semi-auto 6mm Creedmoors. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I'm just speaking from my own head and knowledge and experience. So there's drop in inches. 6mm Creedmoor wins using the same projectiles as the 6 arc. Now let's talk about energy. Where does that come into play? Well, if you're catching deers, self-defense maybe, you might want to know how much energy at given distances. Well, what's red now? Well, 6.5 Grendel. 6.5 Grendel pretty much loses everything in this comparison, in every category. But what also is red? 6mm arc. So 6mm arc is pretty down there with 6mm 6.5 Grendel as far as lowest energy period when comparing all these. So that brings up another question from an energy perspective. Why use a 6mm arc when pretty much literally everything else in the same 6mm category has more energy? I don't know. I didn't invent the 6 arc. I'm just sitting here doing all the numbers and showing you the data. You guys asked for the comparisons. So freeze this screen. You want to talk about energy? Bingo. Now, I said I'm also giving you the dials on your scopes. So let's real quick, let's look at the mils and then we'll look at the MOA. I do almost everything in mils if I can. Remember, red is bad, green is good, yellow's in the middle. So what's the worst? Dial in mils, meaning you'll have to dial the most. At every distance, 6.5 Grendel is the worst, meaning you'll have to dial more. What's in the middle? Again, it's the same drop perspective as the first one. We talked about drop in inches. The more it drops, the more you'll have to dial. It's the same measure. It's the same conversation, just a different way of looking at it. We're not talking about inches now. We're talking about drop in mils and MOA. So charts, the colors are the same. We're just talking about a different way to look at it. 6mm Creedmoor is green. Yeah. But these all dials are good if you're using a bolt action. If you went out to 500 yards with your 6mm Creedmoor, 2.5 mils is going to get you pretty spot on. You go out to 1,000, 8 mils with 6mm Creedmoor, it's going to get you on target. But look at the arc. It's still not terrible at 1,000 yards, 9.5 mil dial. It's not terrible compared to a lot of other things. But again, even in this small data sample, when looking at 6mm arc, well, what's better? 6mm Creedmoor is better. 243 is better at 1,000 yards. 6mm Remington is worse, but actually, no, it's not. 6mm Remington is almost exactly the same performance at 1,000 yards. But then 6.5 Creedmoor is better. Yeah, almost everything on the chart is better than 6mm arc. Then, yeah, almost everything on the chart's better than 6mm arc. Then I'll pop it up real quick. If you're an MOA dude and you like MOA, here's all the same stuff, but using MOA, and these are your dials. So, again, I have videos up on how to come up with all this stuff. I just sat here and spent quite a bit of time color coding all this to make it easy to see. But these drops in mils and MOA is pretty spot on. If you're using a bolt action that's 22-inch barrel, 24-inch barrel, these dials are going to be pretty spot on. You can take them to the bank. I've done that in quite a few other videos at the range, taking them out to 1,000 yards. But, like I said, I'm new to the 6mm arc, so I want to get all these as a baseline and compare them to other calibers. Also make a video on it, so you don't have to sit there and do it. You can just look at these. Now, we show on here that almost everything in the same close category in the 6mm range, almost everything's better. 243, 6mm Creedmoor, 6mm Remington, less drop and more energy than the 6mm arc. And then these numbers are with 24-inch barrels. And then we handicap it even more. A lot of the 6 arc stuff is a 16-inch barrel. So then we're kind of handicapping it even more and making it even slower and drop even faster. Like I said, once I get the speed readings out of the 16-inch barrel, I'm going to come up with my own drop charts. We'll take it out long range. That'll be a whole lot of fun. But you guys asked for it. Quick video. It kind of raises the question, what is the purpose of the 6mm arc when there's other things that perform a lot better? Well, you can go down a rabbit hole. What's the purpose of a 300 Win Mag if a 7mm Remington Magnum has less drop, better performance? Well, why do we have 200, 300, 400 different cartridges when everybody could just deer hunt with a 30-06? Can't throw that in there. Well, why do we have a 5.7 and a 357 SIG when everybody could just carry a 45 ACP? Hey, I don't have all the answers. I'm just putting the numbers out here on a video. But like I said, I'm new to 6mm arc. And it's one of my goals to have videos and knowledge on everything so I can show you guys and I can honestly explain it myself. I didn't watch anybody else's videos. I didn't read anything on 6mm arc. I like learning things myself and making up my own opinions on things. But let me know if you got a 6mm arc in the comments down below. Now I got one too. Learn me something in the comments down below. And yeah, you guys let me know what you think. Appreciate y'all. We'll see you on the next one. Hooty hoo!
Load it up and get it on as soon as you can. 30-06, 10 mil, 50 cap. It don't make a difference, man. like